In the 1830s, they were building the London to Birmingham Railway, and Wolverton happens to be about halfway in between, about 50 miles or so from each. You needed one for people to have a break in their journey, because it was 2 hours in those days from Euston to Wolverton, and then another couple of hours to go on to Birmingham. And you also needed a place where you could change the engines. It was actually a place where the new railway line intersected with the Grand Union Canal, and the Grand Union Canal was an ideal thing to actually carry the heavy materials that would be needed for large-scale building. This place was plonked down in essentially a very agricultural area, and so the railway company, besides building the railway works, obviously built housing to employ people. And in the early days, those streets, which are long disappeared now, they're actually in the location of the Tesco car park. In 1986, the railway works shrunk to a third of its size then. And so you can still see some of the original buildings. Some of them, are the ones alongside the canal, in a very sorry state of repair. But if we look around, there are other buildings which relate to the works. Things like the church, things like the town hall. The town hall was originally the first school that was built by the railway company. If you look at Atlas Gym, that was one of the original works buildings, the works laundry. The railway company did more than just build houses. They were very good paternal employers in the way that people were in the Victorian age. And they built Wolverton Park, and it had within it a football pitch and a velodrome, effectively. And Wolverton Town Football Club occupied it for many years, and in fact the grandstand that was originally built for the park and then became the football grandstand was one of the oldest grandstands in the country, and you can see at least a replica, an echo of it now in the new development. On the bank above the park was the old Royal Train Shed. And they say that has now been converted into housing. Wolverton's railway heritage is extremely important. I mean, Wolverton is not exactly a beautiful place. I mean, it's very much the ugly duckling of Milton Keynes, very much ignored by the people. When the Development Corporation came, Stony Stratford, for example, was seen as the jewel in the crown. Wolverton was, to a great extent, ignored. And I think that we've got to remember that there was a tremendous tradition of craftsmanship and pride in engineering. This is the place where they designed and made the Royal Train, and it's still kept here. Luckily, we were able to save some of the original buildings and got them listed by English Heritage. The Wolverton Park development in many ways is a great way that we, if you like, we've got the echo of the past, but with now a modern life. And I just think that, you know, when you look in a Wolverton house, yeah, they've got central heating now, they've got everything else, but I think it's important, if we can, to preserve the external features of it. Take some pride in the fact that we are different to other places and unique.